You won't believe what happened when the HOA called the cops on my family. It started as a normal day at my rank office, where I've spent years serving with honor and discipline. But then, out of nowhere, the police showed up called by the Homeowners Association right at the place I protect and respect most. Things spiraled out of control fast, and somehow, in the chaos, my wife got shot. The shock hit me harder than anything I've faced before. Now, imagine feeling helpless. Watching someone you love get hurt because of a needless conflict sparked by neighbors who should have been reasonable. The tension wasn't just between me and the HOA. It felt like the whole neighborhood was against us. After everything, I realized that peaceful solutions weren't going to work anymore. But what could I do when those sworn to protect us seemed to be part of the problem? This story isn't just about one tragic event. It's about how a simple disagreement with the HOA turned into something much bigger. A fight that challenged my patience, my values, and my limits. It's about trust, betrayal, and how far someone is willing to go to protect their family and honor. I won't lie. There were moments when I felt lost and angry in ways I never imagined. But what happened next changed everything. I won't spoil it here, but let's just say the neighborhood would never look the same again. The question is, how far would you go when the people you rely on cross a line? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. The next part will reveal just how deep this conflict runs. You're not going to want to miss it. Before everything blew up, life seemed pretty normal. We lived in a quiet neighborhood where people mostly kept to themselves, but the HOA rules were strict, maybe too strict. I'd heard stories about them, how they liked to control every little thing, from the color of your mailbox to the way you parked your car. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was focused on my work and my family. My wife and I had built our lives here, thinking this place was safe. But tension started to rise when the HOA began targeting us with complaints, some petty, some just plain unfair. It felt like they were looking for reasons to pick fights. I tried to stay calm, to handle it the right way. I reached out, tried to talk, but the hostility only grew. It was like walking on eggshells all the time, never knowing what would trigger the next issue. The worst part was how quickly neighbors took sides without knowing the full story. It turned a community into a battleground. Then came the day the cops arrived. The HOA claimed there was a disturbance, but when they showed up, everything went wrong. The officers rushed in, and in the confusion, my wife was hurt. Seeing her there, injured and scared, changed everything. My trust shattered not just in the HOA, but in the system that was supposed to protect us all. What made it worse was how quiet everyone went afterward. The HOA tried to act like nothing happened, brushing it off like it was no big deal. But for me, it was a breaking point. I realized the fight wasn't just about rules or disagreements anymore. It was about standing up when your family is at risk, about facing a system that felt stacked against you. And as I looked around at the neighborhood that once felt like home, I knew things were about to get much darker. The real question was, how far would I have to go to make them listen? After that day, things in the neighborhood changed in ways I never expected. The HOA acted like they were untouchable, throwing their weight around with more confidence than ever. Seemed more like gatekeepers than community helpers. I started hearing whispers from other residents. Some shared their own frustrating stories about how the HOA had made their lives difficult. It wasn't just me and my family. It felt like the whole community was quietly suffering under the same pressure. Meanwhile, my wife was recovering, but the emotional scars ran deeper than the physical ones. She couldn't understand why things escalated so fast, and neither could I. We both tried to hold it together for our kids, but the fear and anger were hard to hide. Every glance at the neighborhood now felt charged, like we were waiting for the next storm to hit. Our friends started to pull away, caught in their own battles with the HOA, and suddenly, isolation was a real threat. On the other side, the HOA board seemed determined to silence anyone who spoke out. There were meetings full of accusations, subtle threats, and promises to keep things orderly. But to me, it felt more like a crackdown on anyone who questioned their authority. I kept thinking about the night that cops came, how quick they were to take action against us, but how slow they'd been to listen or investigate properly afterward. As the days went by, I found myself caught between two worlds: the man who wanted peace and the man pushed to his limits by an unfair system. There were choices to make, and none of them seemed easy or right. Would I fight back with everything I had, or try to find some way to rebuild what was lost? The lines were blurred, and the stakes kept rising. What I didn't expect was how far this would go, dragging not just me, but the whole neighborhood into a conflict no one saw coming. And as I looked around, I knew the next move would change everything. The question was, would it be the right one? Every day felt heavier than the last. The silence around us was suffocating, but beneath it, the tension was like a ticking bomb waiting to explode. The HOA's grip on the neighborhood tightened, and their calls to law enforcement became more frequent and aggressive. It felt like they were building a Fortress 1 designed to isolate and intimidate anyone who dared to stand up. I couldn't shake the memory of that day at my rank office. The shock of seeing my wife hurt by those who were supposed to keep the peace. That moment fueled a fire inside me, a mix of anger and determination that refused to die down. I spent countless nights pacing, weighing every option, every possible consequence. The neighborhood had become a battleground, but this fight wasn't just about us anymore. It was about fairness, justice, and reclaiming our sense of safety. Whispers turned into confrontations. Some neighbors who once nodded politely now avoided eye contact or crossed the street when they saw me. Others, quietly fed up, started reaching out in secret, sharing their own stories of harassment and control by the HOA. It was like a powder keg ready to ignite. Meanwhile, the HOA board held their meetings behind closed doors, making decisions that affected everyone but never inviting real discussion or accountability. Their power seemed absolute, and every effort to challenge them was met with threats of fines, legal action, or worse, calls to the police. The pressure was unbearable. My family's home, once a place of comfort, felt more like a fortress under siege. With every day that passed, the line between peace and chaos blurred. I knew something had to give, and soon. The question was not if the neighborhood would explode, but when and how far it would go before anyone could stop it. As the tension reached its peak, I faced a choice that could change everything. What would I do when pushed to the edge? The answer was coming, but it wasn't here yet. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, a new shock hit that turned everything upside down. Late one evening, I received an unexpected call from a neighbor I barely knew, someone who had kept their distance but now seemed desperate to talk. They told me something no one had mentioned before. The HOA had been hiding more than just strict rules and petty fines. There were secret deals, behind-the-scenes alliances with local officials, and a network that reached far beyond our little new community. Suddenly, this wasn't just about disputes over lawns or noise anymore. It was bigger, much bigger. This revelation shook me to the core. It explained why the police response had been so intense, why complaints against us piled up overnight, and why the neighborhood had felt like it was closing in from all sides. It wasn't just personal, it was systematic. The HOA's influence stretched into places I never imagined. And I realized that fighting them wasn't going to be as simple as standing up to a stubborn board. At the same time, tensions in the neighborhood escalated. More neighbors began taking sides, some out of fear, others out of frustration. Rumors spread like wildfire, and every conversation felt like walking on a thin line between peace and chaos. The community was fracturing, and the calm days we once knew were gone. I felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on me. This was no longer just about protecting my family. It was about exposing the truth and standing against a powerful force that threatened everyone's freedom. But going up against the HOA and their hidden allies meant risking everything I had worked for. The clock was ticking, and the pressure kept building. What I didn't know was how close I was to a breaking point, one that would change the course of this story forever. The fight was far from over, and the next moves would push us all to the edge. The moment everything came to a head was more intense than I ever imagined. After weeks of gathering evidence and talking to neighbors quietly fed up with the HOA's hidden control, I decided it was time to confront the board and expose their secrets. The neighborhood meeting was packed, tension thick in the air, as everyone waited to see what would happen. I stood there, not just as a frustrated resident, but as someone determined to make things right, to protect my family and community. I laid everything out: the secret deals, the influence over local officials, the unfair targeting of families like mine. The room buzzed with shock and disbelief. For the first time, the truth was out in the open, and the HOA could no longer hide behind their rules and fines. Some board members tried to deny it, but the evidence was clear. The power they thought they held started to crumble. But then, just as it seemed like we were winning, the final twist hit hard. One of the neighbors I trusted most stepped forward and revealed they had been working with the HOA all along. Their betrayal stung deeper than any fine or threat. It turned out the web of control was more tangled, and the fight for justice even harder than I thought. Despite the betrayal, the neighborhood had started to wake up. People who once felt powerless found their voices. The HOA's influence began to fade, and for the first time in a long time, there was hope. My wife's recovery became a symbol of resilience, and our family's struggle brought the community together in unexpected ways. This wasn't the end, but a new beginning. The fight had changed us all, showing how far we'd go to protect what mattered most. And even though the betrayal shook us, it also made the victory sweeter. Because sometimes the biggest challenges bring out the strongest strength. The truth always finds a way to shine through. After the meeting, things slowly began to change in the neighborhood. The HOA's grip loosened, and for the first time in a long while, people started to feel like they had a voice. The hidden deals and alliances were exposed, and local officials stepped in to make sure the community was treated fairly. It wasn't an easy process, had been broken, and healing took time, but the willingness to come together was a hopeful sign. My wife's recovery became a source of strength for all of us. Seeing her heal reminded me how important it is to protect what you love, no matter the cost. Our family grew closer through the struggle, learning that even in the darkest moments, resilience and support can make all the difference. The neighbors who had once been silent began speaking up, sharing their stories and demanding respect and fairness. Looking back, the fight wasn't just about one family or one neighborhood. It was about standing up against injustice and refusing to let fear control our lives. The experience taught me how easily power can be abused, but also how powerful a community can be when it unites. Even though the betrayal stung, it was a reminder to stay vigilant and trust wisely. This story is a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles bring the strongest growth. Challenges may come unexpectedly, and people may disappoint you, but holding on to your values and standing for what's right can change everything. If you ever find yourself facing a fight like ours, remember that you're not alone. And that change is possible when enough voices come together. Thank you for following this story. If you've experienced something similar or want to share your thoughts, please comment below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more real stories like this. Until next time, stay strong and keep fighting for what matters most.